Hey, what's going on, good people? It's Gardner Douglas, your Oyster Ninja. I'm here with the world famous here. World famous guys. Mr. Michael Kelly. How's it going, man?
How's it going? Not too
It's
bad.
going. So Mr.
Nice
Kelly
to
here
join
is
you.
from. Say again.
Nice to join you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
As you can see from Mike's fleece sweater here from the world famous Kelly's Oysters.
Yeah.
So
So um so we're on the west coast of Ireland. We're just about 20 minutes south of Galway City, but we're right in the middle of Galway Bay. So that's where we're operating out of. Um so Galway is like in the right in the middle of the west coast. So right along the Wild Atlantic Way. So that's where it is.
nice.
It's not Ireland is a small spot. You'd go north to south in I don't know 8 hours maybe. So it's not that big. So yeah, that's where
And
we're situated.
now you shuck oysters, you
Yeah,
farm oysters, and you also ship oysters and a restaurant also, or
yeah. So I suppose the main our main gig is selling oysters. Yeah, so we have an oyster farm, and that's the main business. Shuck oysters was said first, but I really only do that maybe at the Galway Oyster Festival and then on occasion in competitions if they're on. So um, that's only a small side to it, but
mm-hmm.
that's the main business is selling oysters really.
Nice.
So we've been at it. The business was started by my grandfather back in the 1950s. Um, he would have all his brothers and sisters were immigrating, and he wanted to stay around Galway and make a living out of that. So what was happening at that time was all the wild native oysters were being fished up and sold out to France and Spain and these places. And he decided that he'd sell them as his own Kelly Galway oysters. So he was working with the fishermen and holding them in his own oyster beds and then packing them to for wholesalers and for restaurants. So started small and um 3 generations later we're still going. So yeah, that's
So is your grandfather still living?
no, he passed away there during COVID. So
Oh, wow. Sorry to hear that,
yeah,
man.
yeah. So he passed away during COVID. It was strange times, I suppose, for everyone, funerals and things like that. There wasn't much of an occasion, but I know he had a good and enjoyable life. He done a lot with it. So yeah, I think he was 86 or something. So good age.
Right. Yeah, good age, good age. Well, it's never good age, but I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I suppose it's the thing we say in Ireland. Suppose a good
um, what'd you say?
it's just a turn of phrase in Ireland, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, man, I'm just thinking about starting an oyster farm in the 50s and now it's 2024 and that just sounds like a lot of changes. Did he ever talk about like the changes that he I guess felt like the big differences?
Yeah, I suppose like there was so I suppose when he was starting there was only the wild native oyster. And then when the demand got more there was a bigger demand for oysters so that with all wild species there's only a certain amount. So then they introduced the oysters from the Pacific Ocean and local farmers started growing Pacific oysters in the bag and trestle method, I suppose, and that's meeting demand of oyster sales currently, I suppose. But I suppose his changes were, yeah, I suppose you're like machinery, technology, everything has improved so much in what 70 years. Even like grading machines, a lot of it would have been hand grading at the start. Um, Whereas now you can have machines that'll grade a ton of oysters in an hour. So like it's yeah, technology. all that side of it wasn't in it. I suppose when he was starting, you hadn't traceability, you hadn't as much that side of it, health and safety,
Mm-hmm.
not health and safety, but I suppose health side of it,
Right.
traceability and but yeah, it changed a lot over the years. You probably always have to be able to change as well as you can't be. Things are always oysters are. There's always something that the mortality is different ways of farming them. Even last summer, the we had a big increase in sea temperatures. It went up like 3 or 4 degrees, and weren't used to. So anything that was being graded was there was a lot of mortality in it. So I suppose even for that, for this year, we've learned that we need to probably stop grading and things earlier on in the summer. So I suppose it's just things like that that would have been a big change. Probably the biggest change is oysters. Probably, I suppose when he started selling them, they were all very to high end markets. Whereas we probably noticed in the last 10, 15 years, oysters. Well, I suppose in Ireland, maybe not so in America. It's probably become more of a not a common, maybe isn't the right word, but maybe middle class. Any kind of eating
Mm.
shellfish side of it, but yeah. So loads of changes, I'm sure, over over that 70 years, trying to keep with
So
the time. Things.
I think so right now it's April. So what type of weather are you here having in Ireland right now?
Yeah, so today it was a really nice day, but a lot of rain in the last month. So normally so it's like it has been like around 10 or 10 degrees. I'm not sure what that is. My Fahrenheit isn't great, but
Mine
yeah,
either.
so it's Irish weather is very it's like that all year round, really. It could be 10 degrees Christmas Day, it could be 10 degrees in the middle of June. For it doesn't really change an awful lot during the year, even though we've noticed we're getting a lot more storms. Which isn't great for oysters on trestles and things like that. It's a lot being blown off and things. But yeah, the weather is fairly good, even though in the summer the water temperature increased a lot. The air temperature didn't change an awful lot, but the water temperature did. It went from normally you'd have highs of 17 and it went to 21, 22 last summer. So it was a huge spike, and which there were the oysters weren't used to. So you had a lot of mortality. Anything that had been graded, you had about 50% mortality.
So yeah, you did speak about the difference in the weather and how the oysters reacted to it. So because the water warmed up, the oyster died. Is that correct?
Not
Oh,
necessarily. So oysters, they would be they're very reactive to any kind of stress. So like what
oh,
we would do with oysters was when we would grade them, we wouldn't sell them 6 weeks afterwards. We'd put them back out to the water, let them get used to their let them get used get their energy levels up, so to speak, again, and then before you sell them to improve their shelf life again. So I suppose the biggest thing with the sea temperature is probably like it's not their environment. They're not used to them high temperatures, so they were very stressed, and anything that had been worked on were got even more stress, and that caused the mortality in that.
Roger that. So I think what I forgot to um explain to the audience is
Yeah.
that you guys have a different type of oyster completely than what we
Yeah.
have
So.
here in the United States.
hmm
So you want to
Yeah,
talk
so
about that a little bit?
we have so I probably said it there about the wild. So we have two different types of oysters in our farm. We have a wild it's the wild European flat oyster, which has been there for centuries. And that grows in wild fisheries along the west coast of Ireland. And then we also have the Pacific oyster, which is originated in the Pacific Ocean, and that's grown from seed in normally bag and trestle method. We have a 5 meter tide, so they're all on trestles. We don't need any. Not many oyster farms have any floating oyster farms, they're all on the trestles. So with that tide, so you can get down with tractors, whatever, when the tide is out. So yeah, we have two different types. They're different to the Virginia cast oyster on the East Coast. They're probably a bit more meaty. Especially the wild oyster takes about 6 years to get to market size. And then the farmed oyster, the Pacific one, normally is about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years to get to that size. So the meat is you would notice in the meat and the flavors. You have a lot more meaty oyster in the wild one. So
So you
yeah.
said for the first type, it takes 6 years. Did you say 6 years?
And take 5 to 6 years, yeah, to get to market size oyster.
Wow.
But then I suppose it's always in the wild, so it's not taken out of the ocean until so when the fishermen are dredging the oysters, they have to, if they're not big enough, if they're not 3 inches in diameter, they have to be put back into the ocean. So that's your method of, I suppose, not overfishing and things like that. So from a farming perspective, there isn't an awful lot of farming with them because they're not farmed. So um, on that regard,
And then the other ones take 3 years to process, so to
yeah,
get to standards.
yeah, 3 years. So they would be constant. They would probably be in the first year cycle. They would go on the shaker graders for maybe once or twice in the year, and then at the next stage, normally graded about twice a year. The oysters, because it takes them. Yeah, they all grow like any oysters. They grow at different speeds, so they have to be sorted and put into the right areas then, and then you grade them accordingly in what areas you need to be graded. So yeah, I suppose stock management is important side of that. That you know what you have.
What is the system that, because you say you grade them maybe once or twice a year?
Yeah, so they would be graded and then they'd be put back out into areas, and then I suppose the final grade system that we use, it's all by weight. So I suppose in the US you're all by visual. I think your sizes are all like small, medium, large choice, and I think that's all by visual. It's by the length of the oyster,
Yeah,
if
by the
I'm
length, right?
yeah. Whereas we're all by weight, so it's all by grams. So you'll have your number three will be 70 to 90 grams, and your number two is 90 to 120, and 120 to maybe 150 is your one. And then you'll have a number four maybe as well, if depends on the market. But mainly twos and threes are our main sellers. You don't really like to let them go at you. You want to have them try and sold before they get to number ones.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're getting too big, and you trying to find markets for them at that size. So it's that's why the importance of grading and knowing what you have in stock, because you want to be able to sell them in order of what you have, because they'll stay growing. So yeah.
Now, on oyster shipping, like, do you guys have restrictions on where you can and cannot send your oysters?
Yeah, so yes, we ship them a good few places around the world. We ship London, Denmark, anywhere. Uh, Dubai, we send to Dubai, and Singapore, Canada on okay once a month. But then there isn't agreements then with every country, so there's no agreement between Ireland and the US currently. So I think there's a trial it's mainly between the EU and the US at the moment, but I'm not sure it's ongoing at the moment. So yeah, different countries will have their own documents that need to be, or uh, quality of water quality, or different things like that. So you have to try and keep up with all their paperwork and that side of things.
That sounds like a lot. That sounds like a lot of restrictions, a lot of loopholes, a lot of stuff to keep up with. But I mean, you guys been doing it for a long time, so I guess that kind of gives y'all a leg up, right?
Yeah, I suppose. I have been doing it for a good while. So there's I suppose with a family business as well, there's people that have been there involved with it, so you're kind of learning as you go as well. So it's not just you're not just set into one job. You're kind of have to be multitasking as much as possible. So you're not as you haven't got any blinkers on. You have to try and learn all the facets of having an oyster business. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to. There's no just. I'm not. You can't just say you're doing sales or you're doing the farm side of it. You have to try and have an open eye to all sides of the business. If you want to learn in that regard.
Now, you said if you want to learn,
Yeah, if you want it. Well,
were you pushed into the family business, or did
no,
you
no,
just
no, no,
fall into
no,
it?
no. I would have always had an interest in it. Yeah,
Nice. So that's what I
yeah,
wanted to talk about. Like, how was your introduction into the family business? I'm sure you were out there
yeah.
young.
Yeah, I suppose like my probably early memories is like we have the Galway International Oyster Festival is on every year, and that's where the World Oyster Competition, shucking competition is on. So I suppose you'd have good memories of being a kid and going in watching that competition and things like that. So there was yeah, fond memories of that and just of different occasions of the business. I suppose that's where I got interested and I kind of always wanted to be involved. So yeah, no,
What was your first I guess job in the business? Like, did they put you out on an oyster farm? Did
yeah.
they have you
Uh,
bagging? Like, what?
um, I think so. We would have sold a few mussels as well.
Really?
Um, we sell mussels as well. So my first job, I think, well, it was a mixture between picking mussels off the rocks, and then I used to do deliveries with my grandfather. So he do the driving and I do the deliveries. So I think that's my earliest jobs.
That's cool. I can't imagine because I didn't grow up with my grandfather, but
Yeah.
being him like being so, I would assume, I'm just assuming that he's a popular guy, with this oyster farm. Everybody knows him. And then you, the grandson, little Mikey or little Mike,
Yeah.
and just during those drives, like the nuggets of wisdom that he's,
Mm.
dropping on you. And, you know, do any of those conversations like stick with you even now?
I suppose the stories, just old stories and things that you wouldn't know otherwise unless you didn't ask. So yeah. Yeah, just asking how things were, how like what was it like when he started and different questions like that. But
I get, so why, let's go back to the oyster farm. I wanted to go back to
yeah.
that. So do you guys use the rubber band around the oyster?
No, so when we pack just using seaweed. We don't we find that our oysters are healthy enough to not put the rubber band. I know I see a lot of the flat oysters or the native oysters have the rubber band, but we ensure that the cup side is always down and that they're firmly packed, the lid on the top, tight, keeping the press on from that regard. But no, they're healthy. The tide is a good helper to all that because they're not always in the water, so they're getting trained to be out of the water as such. So the native oysters should last for 10 days and the G gas could last for 2 weeks. So when packed. So they have a good lifespan when out of the water. Packing them is very important that the cup side is always down. Very important.
Why is that for the folks that don't know?
Yeah, so you've so an oysters will filter about 10 liters of water in an hour. So it doesn't realize that it's outside of the sea. So it's gonna open its little mouth and it's gonna be trying to filter some water. So if you haven't got the cup side down, um, the water will come out and it will it'll die in a couple of days. So it's very important that the cup side is always down.
Let's talk about shucking. So
Yeah.
how'd you first get into shucking? Like, do you remember your first memories of oyster shucking?
Yeah, I actually do. So it would have been the Galway Oyster Festival, all these superstars, I suppose, of the shucking industry coming to Galway. 23 countries battling it off to be the best in the world. So yeah, those probably you would have been always trying to open them then, and it's taken me about 15 years to get any good at it. So it takes a long time. Um, yeah, you're just trying to learn, but it takes a long time to pick up the technique. Suppose especially when we would only open them. That's the only time I get a chance to practice is at the festival. So um, yeah, just trying to perfect it and then try to speed up. But speeding up isn't as easy as I think.
Come on now, you make it look easy.
Yeah,
You
I don't
make it.
know. Well, with the so they use the European they use flat oysters in the world competition. So it probably is it's a help to the European shuckers that it's the technique they're used to. Whereas if the competition was on in the States or Australia or something and you were using a different oyster, it wouldn't be as easy. So there's different techniques all around the world. But the 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 best way it seems to open the competition in the worlds is the European. I think it's a Scandinavian technique. It's all hand shucking. The blade is kind of across your fingers and you're open them in that way, yeah. So but yeah, no, shucking is good. So we were trying to speed up now next year.
I feel like I don't think that I realized how hard shucking the flats were until recently, really, because I did
Mm,
the real oyster called five species oyster
mm,
sampler,
yeah,
and I was shucking the flats,
yeah,
and I was like, man, this is a lot harder than I remember
yeah.
because we had got some flats before when I think this had to be around 2016, and I was actually going through the mouth of the oyster, if you can
Oh
believe that.
yes,
And but I see how hard it is to go through the back.
yeah,
So I'm looking forward to getting up with Honor Allen and or
yeah,
somebody and trying that the two-sided knife.
yeah.
I
The
want to
double
try it.
blade, yeah.
Yes.
Double blade, yeah. Well, actually, through the mouth was always the way. So, like, there's been world competitions in here since the 50s as well, and they would have always gone through the mouth, the front of the oyster, and they would have left it on the flat shell. But I think the penalties were only maybe 2 seconds for not severing, so they used just open, flip, and just throw it on the tray. So that way, and I suppose they used to always, an oyster does look probably, it looks a lot fatter on the flat shell as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose when you're opening a lot of oysters, you need it to hold for a certain period of time. So in the cup as well, also it'll stay in its own juices as well. Then it'll stay in the water for a bit better, whereas it'll dry out a lot on the flat. But
Right.
that would have been the technique used in the competition. Willie Morton and all them would have, Vincent, they would have all always a small pointy knife and in into the front of the oyster. But it's all, I suppose the reason it can be a bit more difficult is because, as I said, it's a 5 or 6 year old oyster, so it's fairly strong. That hinge is very strong. So it's a lot more you have to really you kind of do need a bit of power and a bit of force with it, but
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't need too much. You shouldn't be trying to just force it open either. It is like opening a lock, I suppose. You're trying to work your way in as much as blunt force.
And that's what kind of hit me when you said that it takes 3 years or 5 to 6 years to. I was like, well, yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense. That's why it was so hard to get into. You know,
yeah, yeah,
It's been fighting for a long life, and now it's
yeah.
time to please the people.
Yeah, no, especially the native oyster, it has a strong hinge, and then a lot of the time it can have a small hinge as well, so it can be difficult to find the hinge as well. It's not as easy. The hinge is definitely way smaller than your East Coast of America oyster, anyways.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
not as pronounced.
No, you can't just see it. You have to actually look for it. You can't just even though some of the guys I'd say they just open them, Anti and Stephen and
Oh
these
man,
guys they just
we're not even gonna bring those
yeah,
names up, man, because those are like oyster geniuses.
yeah,
I swear they must birth these oysters themselves.
yeah,
That's because only a parent can know their kid that well.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. No, they're really really good. They'll be hard beat by anyone. And then in the European final, then I was delighted that I got into the European final,
Mhm.
because the three guys that were ahead of me were all the last three world champions. So it was a nice thing to get into, but still a good bit behind the three of them. But
But you got
tried
best
to try
presentation,
to
right?
try. Yeah, that was a nice honor. Yeah.
Yeah,
I suppose when I'm not the fastest, that's probably the best prize I can get. So
right.
yeah. So best presentation is I'm not sure, is that in every competition, or are you familiar with it?
Well, for our competitions, majority of the big competitions, they give you extra points for like cleanest plate.
Yeah.
But they didn't. I don't. It might be a couple that actually give you like, hey, you had the best plate, best presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way there's actually kind of a point structure, so it's you have to have your 30 oysters, they have to be in straight lines of normally six down, five across, and then they picked in the best looking oyster. So you could probably still have a lot of penalties and get it if you didn't sever them or something like that. But normally it will be the same as the person with the least penalties. That's normally how it works. But they pick the presentation before they look for the penalties. So when the trays come in, all the trays are in a line, and then they pick, and it's out of 30. So um, you will you'll be aiming to try and get mid to high 20s, or depends on the judges, I suppose. But yeah, so you get 30 second out of the 30, then you'll get that deducted off your time. But yeah, so I was happy how it went.
So let me just. I always talk to when I talk to competitive oyster shuckers, even though you say you don't really shuck that much, only during competitions.
Yeah,
Um,
but I'm still competitive,
exactly. That's the best part. That's the best part.
no matter what it
Uh,
is. Yeah.
um, I want to hear your mindset, like walk it, like just getting ready mentally for one of the biggest stages for oyster shucking.
Yeah, I suppose it's probably maybe in the last year's competition, I came second in the Irish competition, and I always trying to I the first two I was at it for, oh sure, I must be at it 7 or 8 years before that, and probably wasn't taking it as serious, or kind of just turning up and not pretending that you cared, but when you did care. So then maybe actually, yeah, putting a bit of emphasis onto it. Yeah, I did it quite. You just you I wouldn't be nervous type of person or anything, so it wouldn't really, that side of it wouldn't really bother you. But you'd still get there's a huge adrenaline kind of factor off it when you're up there. So it's, yeah, I wouldn't really be phased. I suppose a lot of people probably do get nervous. I suppose I'm lucky that I don't really get nervous about it. Um,
That's a good quality.
yeah,
That's
but then maybe if I did, I might speed up a bit. I think they were kind of saying I was just like in the final of the European, I was a long way behind time wise on the guys, but I just stayed going at my own pace doing it. But maybe I should be more worried about what's going on around me. But I don't know. I don't think that makes much difference.
I get it. I get it. The best competition I ever had was at Maryland in the Nationals. And I placed sixth. But that was the best competition I ever had.
Yeah.
Not the best time I ever had, but the best competition.
Yeah.
And I had to use the bathroom.
Oh,
And my
yeah.
nerves were like racking. I just wanted to finish. I just wanted to
Yeah.
finish. And
Yeah.
I think it was between nerves and have my bladder, and that
Yeah.
was the best competition and it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, you just, I suppose, I don't know, I'm not, yeah, I don't know. I suppose the other guys probably, Stephen or one of them probably know when they've consistently been winning things, is there something you do straight? But yeah, it's hard to know, I suppose. And then you could just have a bad run as well, I suppose, especially in, we only, you're marked off the Irish competition is the only competition really in Ireland. So you kind of have to do well in that. You have to finish in the top two to get invited to other competitions around the world. So
Mm-hmm.
it's important you get into that. And I suppose if you have a bad run at 30 Oysters, that you kind of not going in any other competitions for the year. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough.
It'll be
That's tough.
interesting. Maybe in a few years I'll be able to see is there a consistent way of approaching it. But at the moment I
So
don't really know.
how old are you now?
I'm 30. Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got time. You're still in your
Yeah.
prime.
Yeah. I don't know. Long enough.
In your next competition, right?
Yeah.
What's going to be your mindset to take it all? Because we're just going to say you're going to take it all. Whatever that next competition is, you've already won it. What's your mindset? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
We're not going to leave it to fate. What are you going to do?
Yeah. I think I might just I think in the last competition I was kind of going for least penalties and such, but you have to kind of have a fine balance. So I think I might just try and go a bit faster, but I just hope I don't become unclean. But no, I will. I have to speed up. I know well I have to speed up. So whatever way technique I have to do, that's what it'll have to be.
That's what
So it
it has to be.
has to be faster. So I'm just hoping that I have the clean side of it down, and that was always kind of what I was told. When my own father would have told me that get clean first and then speed will follow. So I think I kind of have the clean part down. So it's trying to get a bit faster, but it's not as easy as as that.
I think that your father and my father taught. That was the first lesson that my father taught me when he taught me how to shuck oysters. Don't worry about speed. Just make
Yeah,
sure they look good.
yeah. No,
That's it.
that's exactly it. Yeah, don't worry about it. The speed will come if you can do it right. Suppose like a lot of things.
Uh, yeah,
You do it right, that you'll speed up at it like any skill, I suppose. Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, let's go back to the oyster farm. So
Yeah.
we when we first got on before we were actually starting the podcast, you started talking a little bit about the tours that you guys do. So can you talk a little bit about the farm tours, like what people could
Yeah.
expect when they come and check it out?
Yeah. So it's something we've kind of branched into in the last couple of years. Is farm experiences. So I take majority of them myself, or else my uncle will take them. And So you come and you're welcomed at our yard, and then you're given a history of the oysters in the area and histories of oysters in general, and then we go and we do a farm walk, and then there's an option of actually harvesting the oysters out of the sea yourself, and then we do an oyster tasting with a local craft beer, and then a few different bits of fun, learning how to shuck oysters, things like that, on a little pop-up bar that I create on a 250-year-old pier that we have on our beside our oyster farm. So um yeah, it's a lot about the history and oysters in the community in Galway Bay and oysters in general. Yeah, it's just a bit of fun. So I think I had a party there from England there today, so they seem to enjoy it. We did a few little bits of fun, a whiskey mist and a
You
gin.
said whiskey mist.
Yeah.
Come on, what's
So
that? What is that?
yeah, I think
Is that just like
I
a spray?
yeah. So you put it in, you put a whiskey into whatever your whiskey of choice, and you put it into your little spritzer. You put it on your oyster and see what compares with it. So
I like
yeah,
that.
we have a few different novel kind of things like that that we like to try with the oysters. So, but first of all, we'd always tell the customer that they should always try the oyster as it is, because if you go anywhere around the world and you try an oyster with Tabasco and lemon, they'll probably all taste the same. So yeah, or very similar. So it's very important that you actually taste what the actual oyster tastes like, and then you can try whatever you like on it then after that. So um yeah. So it's a new side of it to the business, but the mainstay is still farming them and selling them is still the main side of the business.
Um,
There you go.
that sounds like a fun tour. That sounds like
Yeah.
a real fun tour. So you and even get to dredge your own oysters. So like the oysters that the people not dredge, harvest, spring up, right?
Yeah, so harvest them, yeah.
So the ones that they harvest, can they eat those or do your
Yeah, you can
oysters?
eat them.
Okay, man, look,
Yeah, you can eat them. All of the oysters we would sell though would have to go through the purification tanks. But uh, you can eat them.
that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
The best experience I ever had on an oyster farm, I was in Maine at Glidden Point, and we did a farm tour and picked the oyster right up out the water, shucked it, eat it, picked
yeah,
a big old clam out the water,
mm,
shucked it, eat it.
mm,
It gets no better.
yeah.
It's
No, it
no.
is. It is good. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's nice, and I enjoy doing the experience as well, because I majority of people that come to the farm tours are actually interested in oysters, and they've had an oyster experience themselves, maybe somewhere else in the world, and it's nice to just talk about oysters and talk about everyone's experience with them. So you're always learning from that regard. So it's
Mm-hmm.
good.
So I know we've spent a lot of time on the oyster shucking, but you guys also do mussels and clams, right?
Yeah, so we just work with so with the mussels, we work with a couple of mussel farmers, and we just we will take them off them, and then we will give them the tidal effect, because normally what happens with the with mussels is they're taken straight out of the ocean and then off the long lines and they're sold for market. So with our mussels, they get the tidal effect. So the tide comes up, it hardens them up and increases their shelf life. It's a bit extra labor, but yeah, that's all just for the Irish market mussels. So it's busy in the summertime, and then with the clams, we just work with one local fisherman as well, Willie Nolan, and he fishes up the clams and we just package them up. So we don't actually farm those, so to speak.
Okay, it's a good partnership.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah.
What do you like doing for fun when you're not fooling with these oysters?
So I play a sport called hurling. I don't know if you've ever seen it. That's that's my my other
I'm about to look it
hobby.
up. You said
Yeah.
Harlan?
Hurling, yeah.
Oh,
Hurling.
hurling.
Yeah.
Come on,
Uh,
man. That looks
yeah.
aggressive.
It's a bit aggressive, but toughens you up, yeah.
So
So yeah.
what's the prim like what's the point of not point what it looks like lacrosse. It has a lot of bait. You got a ball, you got a bat. That's not a bat though,
Yeah.
right? What is it? Can you
It's a
explain?
hurl.
It's
It's a
hurling.
hurl. Yeah, no, that's what it's called. Yeah, so it's like it's an Irish game. But it's probably there's two Irish games. There's Gaelic football and then there's hurling, and they're the most popular sports in Ireland. So yeah, and then yeah, so you play here in your county in clubs, and then there's a county team, and that's fairly big, the county teams and stuff. So but the clubs, it's more like parishes and things like that, pride of your where you're from and things like that. But hurling is good. Yeah. And I actually I play as a goalkeeper. So that's my position.
So you're kind of skilled. It
Yeah.
says hurling is the fastest game on the grass, the
Yeah.
most skillful game in the world. Furthermore,
Yeah.
you must have wrote this. You must have wrote
Oh yeah, yeah.
it.
Second to oyster shucking.
Second. Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's
Oh, that's great.
it is, yeah, it's kind of a sport that you kind of have to be at when you're young. Um, it's difficult sport to get good at if you don't start at, we say you'd want to have a hurl in your hand at 5 or 6. So yeah.
Imagine
But
that.
yeah, it's very popular in this area. It's popular in a lot of Ireland. So like, and then the main stadium is like 80,000. So when the county teams play the finals, it's like 80,000. So it's the biggest sport in Ireland. So that and Gaelic football. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, so that's my that takes up all the time.
You're a superstar, man.
I don't
You're a
know.
superstar. Come on, come on. Don't be modest. You're a superstar.
No,
Uh,
I don't think so. Uh,
wow.
yeah.
So what's the I guess have you ever won a championship? Like how does is it a
Yeah, so
championship? Is
you
that the goal?
play Yeah, so you play with your club team in your local area,
Hmm.
and you try and yeah, you try and win your division. So we actually won our division last year, so we're promoted to the top division this year. So that's what you're aiming to do. You're trying to get up to your best level and try and win the senior division then. So yeah.
All right. Sheesh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how much practice actually goes into that?
Yeah, so like you'd be training, or you could be going 3 or 4 times a week in a lot of the year. Yeah,
So you
so
make wow. So you do that 3 to 4 times a week.
yeah, yeah, in the evening time.
Good
Yeah,
for you. Good for you, man. You're
yeah.
juggling is what we say. When you're
Can
juggling.
while I'm able. I'll be long
Right.
enough when I won't. So while I can, I will.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah,
man, I really appreciate you for taking time out of
yeah. I
your
hope.
hurling time and and fixing
Yeah,
time for the Oyster Ninja podcast. In the meantime, between time, where can people find you? How
yeah.
can they
Sure.
set up tours?
Yeah. So it's like, I suppose all our we're on Instagram, Kelly Oysters, and then for the tours, we're just currently in the middle of setting up a new booking system, so hopefully that'll be up soon. But you can, there's a on the website, there's an inquiry page. For the tours, it's very tide dependent, so we'll get that set up. But yeah, you'll find us Kelly Oysters. Put us in Google, you'll find us.
Cool. I got one more question. This is my
Yeah,
last question. If I come to Ireland, right,
yeah.
what do I have to see? Or what are some of like the non-tourist things that I think tourists don't see or don't appreciate? I want to see that.
Yeah, like I don't know. I suppose I would obviously say come to Galway and just soak in the atmosphere in Galway is always very
Hmm.
good. There's loads of parts, the whole of the west coast really. Anything along from the Cliffs of Moher right down to Kerry, all that is it's scenery really and history. In Ireland, there's so much history, and it's all very green. So, but yeah, no, just go into Galway, sit in as well, sit, have a pint and soak up the atmosphere. It's yeah, it's nice. There, anything you do really is good, but
Is
um,
Galway a friendly place?
very friendly place, I think.
I only asked because I went to Canada and
Yeah,
everybody was so nice. I'm like, what is going
yeah,
on here? This has got to be a
yeah,
trick.
yeah. No, Galway is very friendly, I think, anyways. But no, it is, it is. I think anywhere in Ireland you come, you'll get a Cade Mead of Fáilte, I think, as they call it, 1,000 welcomes. So yeah, I
Well,
think we're well known for our hospitality. I think it's one of our best traits. So
I'm gonna be
yeah,
with
I
you,
look
so I
forward
know I'll
to
be
seeing you as US Shucking champion when you come next time.
yeah, yeah. Is it eventually we're working toward we're working toward
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's some
So
fast guys, man.
there it is.
Fast
Yeah.
and girls, fast guys and girls.
Yes. Yes.
All right, thank you so much, okay?
All right. Okay. Thanks for having me on.
For sure.